The Yorkshire Dales stretched endlessly beneath a brooding grey sky, their rolling green hills crisscrossed by ancient stone walls that had weathered generations. Nestled within this timeless scenery was Thornfield Farm, though today it felt more like a war zone than a tranquil rural haven. William Whitmore gripped the top rail of a wooden fence, his gaze fixed on Thundra, the enormous Angus bull that had become his worst ordeal. For the past 3 months, ever since his trusted farmhand Jack Morrison had mysteriously vanished, the bull had been unapproachable. Every attempt to go near him risked injury. Thunder, weighing nearly 1,000 pounds, had already injured 2 veterinarians, charged at 3 separate workers, and even tried to ram through reinforced steel gates. "He's getting worse with each passing day," William muttered to Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, his housekeeper, a firm yet warm-hearted woman in her 60s who had loyally managed the household since William's wife, Margaret, succumbed to pneumonia 2 winters prior. Mrs. Hartwell adjusted her apron and peered toward the pen, worry etched into her face. "That creature's not right in the head, Mr. William. Perhaps it's time to consider letting him go before someone's seriously hurt." William shook his head with determination. "Thunder's the best breeding bull in all of North Yorkshire. His lineage is worth a small fortune. There has to be another solution." That very morning, as hope seemed as remote as the Scottish border, the unexpected happened. A modest car pulled up the gravel drive, and out stepped a thin, pale boy no more than 7 years old. He clutched a small rucksack and wore an expression of quiet sorrow that seemed too heavy for someone so young. The social worker, Sarah Collins, relayed the grim details. The boy's name was Oliver. His parents had been killed in a tragic car crash near Manchester. He was a distant relative of Margaret, her late cousin's son. With no other family willing to take him in, he was in desperate need of a home. "I'm no father," William objected, running a weary hand through his graying hair. "This is a working farm, not a place to raise a child." Mrs. Hartwell stepped forward, her nurturing instincts overriding any hesitation. "Nonsense, Mr. William. This home has seen children before. That lad needs kin, and kin is kin no matter how far removed." Oliver remained silent as the adult spoke, his large brown eyes absorbing the unfamiliar surroundings. He was small for his age, his brown hair untamed, and his clothes clearly passed down through many hands. He barely spoke, responding only with subtle nods or shakes of the head. Once the paperwork was completed, Sarah drove off, leaving William standing beside the boy who now, unexpectedly, was his responsibility. "Well then," William said awkwardly, "you'll be staying in the guest room upstairs." Mrs. Hartwell quickly took charge, ushering Oliver into the kitchen for a proper meal. The farmhouse kitchen was the picture of traditional English charm, complete with an old Olga cooker, wooden beams, and shelves lined with homemade preserves and ceramic dishes. Oliver ate his shepherd's pie without a word, occasionally glancing out the window where Thunder could be seen pacing restlessly inside his pen. The next morning, while William was in the village of Grassington discussing Thunder's behavior with other farmers at the Devonshire Arms pub, Oliver slipped quietly out of the house. Mrs. Hartwell, humming a Yorkshire tune while hanging laundry, didn't notice he was gone. The boy wandered across the farm, passing the stone barn where sheep huddled in the shade and the chicken coop where hens pecked contentedly at the dirt, until he reached Thunder's enclosure. There stood the immense bull, gleaming black in the pale morning sun. For months, anyone who neared him had been met with ferocity, charged at or threatened. Veterinarians had even suggested sedating him just to get close. Farmhands had flatly refused to enter the paddock. But as Oliver stepped up to the fence, something remarkable took place. Thunder raised his massive head and stared directly at the boy. Instead of snorting or scraping the ground as he usually did, the bull simply watched. His nostrils flared as he took in the child's scent, yet there was no sign of hostility. Guided by a feeling he didn't understand, Oliver moved closer. Oliver slowly reached out his small hand toward the fence. "Hello," he whispered gently. "You look sad." Thunder approached with deliberate caution, each step slow and measured. When he reached the wooden railing, he lowered his massive head, bringing his muzzle within inches of Oliver's extended fingers. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hartwell, having finished hanging the laundry, noticed the boy was no longer in the yard. Concerned, she began searching the grounds. As her eyes landed on Oliver by Thunder's pen, her heart nearly stopped. She opened her mouth to cry out but then froze. What she saw made no sense. Thunder, who had tormented and terrified grown Mina, was standing still, allowing Oliver to stroke his nose through the fence rails. The same bull that had charged professionals now stood perfectly calm under the boy's tender touch. If this remarkable moment of connection has already touched you, stay tuned. The story only grows more extraordinary. Consider liking and subscribing if you're watching this unfold. The bond between this child and the bull is just beginning, and what follows will change lives in unimaginable ways. Could some people be born with an innate ability to connect with animals, or is there something deeper behind Oliver's unusual gift? Shaken, Mrs. Hardwell hurried back to the farmhouse and grabbed the phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed the pub. "Mr. William, you need to come home right now," she said, her voice a mix of urgency and disbelief. "Is Oliver all right?" William asked quickly. "He's fine, but you won't believe what's happening. The boy's with Thundra and the bull is. Well, he's calm, gentle, even." Without hesitation, William bolted from the Devonshire Arms and jumped into his Land Rover, which sent clouds of dust flying as it tore down the narrow, hedge-lined roads. His mind raced. None of it made sense. Thundra, the same bull who had hospitalized 2 vets, was now calmly interacting with a 7-year-old boy. When he arrived back at Thornfield Farm, William found Mrs. Hartwell standing at a safe distance from the bullpen, eyes wide with disbelief. Oliver was perched atop the wooden fence rail, speaking softly to Thunder, who stood directly beneath him, listening with quiet attentiveness. "How long has he been out there?" William asked, his voice barely audible. "Nearly an hour," Mrs. Hardwell answered. "And I swear, that bull hasn't moved an inch unless the boy did. He's listening to every word." A short time later, Dr. James Petona, the local vet from Skiptona, arrived, responding to William's urgent call. A no-nonsense Yorkshireman with over 30 years of experience working with livestock, Dr. Petona had seen his share of strange behavior, but this defied everything he knew. This isn't possible," he murmured, adjusting his glasses as he observed Thunder's tranquil demeanor. "That bull's been attacking anything that gets within 10 feet. Just last week he nearly gored young Tom Bradley from next door." But there was Thunder, calm as the summer breeze, oblivious to the adults now gathering nearby. Oliver continued to talk to the bull in a soft voice. He spoke about his dreams, his longing for his parents, and the fear he felt in this strange new place. "I know you miss Jack too," Oliver said, somehow aware of the missing farmhand. "Mrs. Hardwell told me he used to look after you. Maybe we could be friends instead." Incredibly, Thunder responded not with grunts or threats, but with low, deep rumblings that sounded almost like replies. His ears were forward and focused, and his great head dipped and swayed gently, as if nodding. "Oliver," William called out softly, careful not to alarm either the child or the animal, "come away now, lad." The boy turned and smiled, a warm, sincere smile that no one had yet seen from him since he'd arrived. "He's not mean, Mr. William," Oliver said. "He's just lonely like me." With measured, unhurried movements, Oliver climbed down from the fence. Thunder didn't react aggressively. Instead, he merely turned back to the field and resumed grazing, as though their hour of peace had been perfectly ordinary. Dr. Petona watched in amazement, still trying to process what he'd seen. He began inspecting Thunder from a cautious distance. Leaning on the fence, Dr. Petona studied the bull, still marveling at the shift in his behavior. His breathings steady, his postures relaxed. He noted aloud, "None of the signs of stress I've been documenting for months. It's like he's an entirely different animal." That evening, over a hearty Yorkshire supper of roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, the adults sat around the farmhouse table discussing what they had witnessed. "The boy has a gift," Mrs. Hartwell said firmly as she spooned another helping onto Oliver's plate. "My grandmother used to say that some people are born able to speak with animals. She'd tell tales of a man in Wensleydale who could tame the wildest horse with just a touch." William remained unconvinced. There has to be a rational explanation. Maybe Thunder was just tired, or ill. But Dr. Petona shook his head. "With all due respect, Mr. William, I've had to sedate that bull 3 times this month just to get close. Today, he let me observe him for nearly an hour without the slightest hint of aggression. Whatever this is, it's real." Oliver, quietly eating, listened without comment. When William asked him directly how he had known to approach the bull, the boy simply shrugged. He looked sad. Oliver replied, "Just like I did when I got here. Sad animals just want someone to listen." In the days that followed, a new rhythm emerged. Every morning after breakfast, Oliver would bring fresh water to Thunder and speak to him in low, gentle tones. The bull, as if waiting for these moments, would approach the fence eagerly. Word of the strange bond between the boy and the bull spread quickly across the Dales. Farmers from villages as far off as Harrogate made the journey to see the phenomenon for themselves. In pubs from Grassington to Kettlewell, the tale took on the shape of a local legend. But not everyone was thrilled. Some older, more traditional farmers eyed Oliver with suspicion. "It's not natural," muttered Harold Thwaite, a cantankerous cattleman from Hebden. "Bulls are meant to be managed with force, not whatever this is. Witchcraft, more like." William found himself defending Oliver and Thunder more often, particularly as the boy's presence seemed to bring a calm to the entire farm. The sheep followed him like a shepherd. The cat swooned affectionately around his legs. Even the normally fussy hens let him gather eggs without protest. One warm afternoon, while Oliver was quietly teaching Thunder to respond to basic voice commands, Mrs. Hartwell made a startling discovery. She had been sorting through Margaret Whitmore's old photo albums when she came across a faded snapshot taken at a summer fair in Grassington. It featured a young couple and a small boy, one who looked strikingly like Oliver. "Mr. William," she called, excitement in her voice. "You'll want to see this." William took the photo and stared at it, his breath catching in his throat. The couple in the picture were, unmistakably, Oliver's parents, and standing beside them at the edge of the fairground was a much younger Thunder, still a calf. "They came to the summer fair," William murmured. "Margaret always used to invite families from the city who couldn't afford a countryside holiday. Oliver must have been here when he was just a toddler." The revelation cast everything in a new light. Oliver's instant comfort on the farm, his knowledge of its layout, and the most striking of all, his effortless connection to Thunder. They weren't strangers. They had met before. When shown the photograph, Oliver's face lit up with recognition. "I remember now," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Thunder was little back then. I gave him apples." They weren't forming a new bond. They were rekindling an old one, lost in memory and time. What does this long-forgotten childhood connection mean for Oliver's place on the farm, and how might it reshape William's view of the boy he reluctantly took in? The discovery changed everything for William. He no longer saw Oliver as troubled orphan. He now understood the boy's uncanny bond with the land, the animals, and especially with Thunder. It was a reunion, a one that had been years in the making. Suddenly, everything made sense. "You belonged here all along," William murmured, gazing at the old photograph of toddler Oliver feeding apples to a young Thunder. "You were already family, even before you came to stay." For the first time since his parents' passing, Oliver felt truly at home. Memories from his childhood visit to Thornfield Farm came rushing back at the warmth of Margaret's kitchen, the earthy scent of hay in the barns, and the joy of playing with a gentle calf named Thunder. Dr. Peden began carefully documenting Oliver's interactions with all the animals on the farm and not just Thunder. What he observed was astonishing. Oliver seemed able to sense when animals were unwell, calm aggressive behavior with a quiet presence, and even help traumatized creatures begin to heal. His intuition went beyond chance, it bordered on the miraculous. Word spread quickly, first across Yorkshire, then further. A journalist from the Yorkshire Post arrived. Soon after, reporters from BBC Leeds came knocking. The story of the orphan boy who could speak to a dangerous bull captured the imagination of people across England. "I never wanted this kind of attention," William confided to Mrs. Hartwell one morning, watching yet another news van roll up the drive. "The boy needs stability, not to be turned into a spectacle." But with fame came new opportunities. Farmers began bringing troubled animals to Thornfield Farm, hoping Oliver might help. A once untouchable horse, traumatized in an accident, grew calm and trusting under Oliver's care. A sheepdog, listless after its owner's death, regained its spark through the boy's quiet encouragement. "The child has a gift that could help animals across the country," Dr. Peyton remarked, "but we must protect him. We cannot let the world exploit that gift." William agreed. Strict rules were put in place. Oliver would only work with animals a few hours each day, always under adult supervision, and never with any creature deemed truly dangerous. His education remained the top priority. Special accommodations were made at Grassington Primary School to support his unusual circumstances. Meanwhile, the modest income from Oliver's consultations ensured the future of Thornfield Farm. William reinvested in improved veterinary facilities, better animal housing, and even established a fund for Oliver's future education. One cozy evening, as they sat by the fireplace, William made a life-changing decision. "Oh," he said gently, watching the boy read a book on animal behavior, "I want to ask you something important." Oliver looked up, curious. "Would you like me to adopt you, to make you a proper Whitmore and to ensure this will always be your home?" Oliver's face lit up in a way William had never seen before. "Really? You'd want me as your real son?" "You've been my real son since the day you arrived," William replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I just want to make it official." From the kitchen doorway, Mrs. Hardwell wiped away joyful tears. The once lonely farmhouse had become a true family home. The adoption was finalized within months. The village of Grassington gathered to celebrate as Oliver Whitmore officially became part of the family that had long belonged at his heart. Thundra, the bull once feared by all, had brought them together. But their greatest challenge was yet to come. Dr. Marcus Whitfield, a prominent animal psychologist from Oxford University, arrived at Thornfield with serious concerns. "There are ethical questions about using a child's abilities in any commercial context," he said coolly. "I've been asked to evaluate whether this situation is truly in the boy's best interests." William's stomach dropped. He had known this moment would come eventually. Dr. Whitfield spent 3 days at the farm, closely observing Oliver's work with Thunder and the other animals. He interviewed William, Dr. Pete, Mrs. Hartwell, Oliver's teachers, and even some of the visiting farmers. "The boy appears healthy and well-adjusted," he admitted reluctantly at the end of his visit, "but I remain concerned about the psychological pressure being placed on him to apperform, even if unintentionally." "He's never forced to work with any animal," William said firmly. "Oliver chooses which cases to help with, and we only accept animals that genuinely need care." Dr. Whitfield remained unconvinced. "I'm recommending that Oliver be moved to a more conventional environment, somewhere he can undergo proper psychological evaluation, without his supposed gift being exploited." The word "supposed" hung in the air like a challenge. Oliver, who had been quietly listening in the corner, finally spoke up. "You don't believe animals have feelings, do you?" Dr. Whitfield looked down at the boy, his tone clipped and clinical. "Animals operate on instincts and learned behaviors, child. They don't have complex emotions like humans." "Thunder does," Oliver replied simply. "Would you like me to show you?" What followed would be debated in academic journals for years. Oliver led the group to Thunder's enclosure. He stood at the fence and spoke clearly to the bull. "Thunder, this man doesn't believe you understand anything. He thinks you're just a dumb animal. Show him how you feel about that." In an instant, Thunder's demeanor shifted. The normally gentle bull snorted and pawed the ground, his body tense with energy. He made short, threatening lunges toward the fence, but only in the direction of Dr. Whitfield. The psychiatrist stepped back, visibly startled, as Thunder's agitation grew. "This proves nothing," he said stiffly. "The animal is responding to visual cues, that's all." Oliver tilted his head. "Really?" He turned back to the bull, lowering his voice. "It's okay, Thunder. He's just scared because he doesn't understand. Be nice now." Immediately, Thunder calmed. He lowered his head and returned to grazing as if nothing had happened. The barn fell silent. Was this proof of Oliver's deep connection with animals, or could there still be a rational explanation? Dr. Whitfield remained stone-faced. "Despite the theatrics, I stand by my recommendation. The child's obsession with animals is unhealthy for a developing mind. He should be removed from this environment." What Oliver did next shocked everyone. "I want to speak for myself," he told William that evening. "Please invite people from social services, the RSPCA, and the Education Authority tomorrow." Here, the next morning, the main barn was transformed into a kind of informal courtroom. Nearly 30 people attended: journalists, officials, teachers, social workers, neighboring farmers all gathered to determine the boy's future. Oliver stood in front of them, small in stature but steady with resolve. Thunder stood nearby, visible through the open barn doors, watching quietly. "My name is Oliver Whitmore," the boy began, his voice clear and confident. "When my parents died, I didn't think I could ever be happy again. I felt lost and scared. I didn't think anyone would ever love me." He paused, then looked directly at Dr. Whitfield. "Then I came here, and I met Thunder. He was scared too, and angry, like me. We helped each other feel better." His voice grew stronger with every word. "Dr. Whitfield thinks living here is hurting me, but he's wrong. This is the first place I've felt safe since my parents died. Mr. William loves me. Mrs. Hardwell takes care of me, and Thunder is my best friend." As if on cue, the bull took a step closer to the barn, almost in solidarity. "I know some people think what I do with animals is strange," Oliver continued, "but it makes me happy to help them. When a frightened horse learns to trust again, or a sick cow gets better, I feel like I'm doing something that matters." Dr. Whitfield interrupted. "But child, don't you want normal friendships? Don't you want to play games with other children instead of spending all your time with farm animals?" Oliver smiled softly. "I do have friends at school, and I do play games, but Thunder and the other animals are my friends, too. Why can't I have both?" At that moment, Mrs. Pennington, the headmistress of Grassington Primary, stood up. "If I may speak on Oliver's behalf," she said, "his academic performance is outstanding, his social development is perfectly healthy, and every psychological evaluation we've conducted shows a remarkably well-adjusted child." She glanced toward Dr. Whitfield, then added gently, "The only unusual thing about Oliver is his extraordinary ability with animals." Dr. Peden nodded, stepping forward. "In 30 years of veterinary practice," Dr. Peden said, "I've never witnessed anything like Oliver's gift. He connects with traumatized animals that no traditional method could reach. He's helping creatures most of us had given up on." One by one, farmers stood to offer their own testimony as the stories of once unrideable horses, cows that had stopped producing milk, dogs rendered aggressive by neglect or abuse. In every case, Oliver's quiet patience and gentle empathy had succeeded where even seasoned professionals had failed. But the most powerful testimony came not from a person, but from Thunder. As if sensing the gravity of the moment, the enormous bull slowly approached the barn doors and let out a deep, resonant call, long and low, filled with unmistakable emotion. The sound hushed the entire room. Oliver walked to the doorway and placed his hand gently on Thunder's nose through the wooden slats. "He's saying he needs me," Oliver said quietly. "And I need him too." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. In that moment, everyone in the room, as social workers, farmers, teachers, even skeptics, saw the undeniable bond between a boy once broken by grief and a bull once ruled by rage. Even Dr. Whitfield, standing stiffly near the back, seemed visibly moved. After a pause, he finally spoke. "Yeah, broken bar, I must admit, what I've witnessed today challenges many of my assumptions about animal behavior and about human psychology," he said, his voice softer than before. "Perhaps there are forms of healing and communication science doesn't yet fully understand." A week later, the official decision arrived. Oliver would remain at Thornfield Farm under the guardianship of William. He would continue his education while helping animals, under careful supervision and support. In a surprising turn, Dr. Whitfield personally requested to return periodically, and not as a critic, but as a student, hoping to study Oliver's unique methods and learn how they might help others. As autumn gave way to winter in the rolling hills of the Yorkshire Dales, Oliver found his rhythm balancing schoolwork, friendships, chores, and the quiet, extraordinary work he did with animals in pain. Thunder, once feared and untouchable, had become his constant companion and ambassador, helping show other wounded creatures that people could be trusted again. On quiet evenings, Oliver and William would sit by the hearth while Mrs. Hardwell knitted by the fire. They would talk about the future. "I think I want to be a vet," Oliver said one night, sketching a picture of Thunder in his notebook. "Maybe open a clinic for animals no one else can help." William watched him for a moment, pride glowing in his eyes. "You know, son," he said slowly, "when you first came to this farm, I thought taking you in might be the hardest thing I'd ever do." Oliver glanced up. "And now?" William smiled, the lines in his weathered face deepening with warmth. "Now I know it was the best thing I've ever done. You didn't just heal Thunder, you healed all of us." Outside, snow began to fall gently, blanketing Thornfield Farm in soft white peace. In his stall, Thunder slept soundly, content in the knowledge that his boy was close by, safe, loved, and finally home. The lonely bull and the grieving child had found what they needed most: a family, a place where their bond was not only accepted but celebrated, and a future full of hope. Oliver's story became legend across England, not merely as the boy who could speak to animals, but as living proof that the deepest wounds can be healed by the most unexpected friendships. And years later, visitors to Thornfield Farm would still find Oliver and Thunder side by side, their bond unbroken, their love a quiet testament that sometimes, the truest miracles come not from magic, but from the pure, fearless heart of a child who simply refuses to stop believing. So what made Oliver's gift so special? Was it something supernatural? Or was it simply a heart unclouded by doubt, seeing a wounded soul and choosing to love it back to life?